So look, the visual arts and the institutions that exhibit and collect them, by their nature, do constantly change. And one of the most profound changes over the past 20 or so years has, of course, been the astonishing growth of the digital media technologies, and especially the World Wide Web. Like all revolutions, this one had its origins in multiple developments over a longer period. Sometimes it feels like it's all just happening now, but I want to look a bit further back and see where this has come from. In this talk, I want to explore some key aspects of the development of visual art and media technologies, especially over the past 45 years or so, and how it's come to form such a strong, widespread and distinctive field of creative practice and audience experience, which is what you're seeing here. This is a work by Ryoichi Ikeda of Japan, and you get that sense of something that is quite extraordinary and enveloping, I hope. I'll also try to tease out some of the current dynamics or sort of arcs of exploration that may help point where the field may evolve in coming years. I want to look at specific aspects of creative practice, as well as sampling some organisational responses, including the experience of the Australian Centre for the Moving Image, which has now, in quite a young period, become one of the world's leading centres, specialising in addressing and developing the field. I want to take this talk in two parts. The first, I will look at the nature of the field, and particularly a survey of artistic practice, and how some institutions around the world are responding to the moving image. Then in the second part, I will look in some depth at my own institution, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. But first, let me sort of position a bit more about this aspect of the moving image. Earlier on, one of your speakers said you can have survey papers and you can have critical papers. This will be more a survey. It's a very large, complex and rapidly evolving field. So all I can do is give you an overview of how we see it and how we're responding to it. As a result, I don't attempt to say what I'm going to present here is any definitive history or a definitive story, but more I hope we give some impressions. So firstly, the moving image. We say it's a popular culture form, and it's quite young, obviously, in comparison with painting, sculpture and so on. It's a very recent development, even if you look back to the history of film. And it does embrace much more than the specific field of art. And I will frame this talk, and certainly Acme frames its content in that context. So I will consider aspects such as media art, film, television, video games, cross-media or hybrid practice, as well as the contemporary digital culture and the implications of the World Wide Web and more recently social media. Given the sheer scale of the field, I couldn't cover the entire thing, so I will focus more on the artistic practice, but show you, I hope, how and why we put together with artistic practice other subject matter that some see as more industry-based. One other comment. Technology underpins the creation and presentation of all moving image works, of course. My interest here is not centrally in the technologies themselves. I won't be speaking much about the specific technologies. What interests us, rather, is the creative application and cultural experience of the resulting works, and that's what I will focus on. As I said, I'll spend particular time looking in some depth at how ACME, which opened in late 2002, has positioned itself as, I believe, a quite unique model responding to this field. I'll give you an overview of how we operate, and a detailed look at our exhibitions, film, creative and collections programs, so you get a sense of what we deliver and how successful it is. Doing this, I hope, that will also allow me to examine, through ACME's specific offers and experiences, some generic matters of interest to the wider field. As I say, it's not feasible to give a full survey of the field, but I hope through all of this it will give you some impressions and some pointers. Now, looking through any technology revolution naturally generates an extraordinary mix of surprise, uncertainty, excitement, but also challenge, which leads to new thinking and innovation. There is also commonly a very rapid assimilation of new ideas, and they very rapidly get outdated. Ideas come in and move on very, very rapidly when you're in such a revolution. Also, the innovations that come from them change very rapidly. as the next thing rapidly overtakes the last one introduced. And I think that's one of the things you'll see in the slides I'm about to show you, how quickly some of the media art works. Some feel very dated, very, very quickly. Others really are all standing the test of time. And if you take that nature, the changes brought about by media technologies in the visual arts are multidimensional. Film and video-based art took new directions really, I guess, from the 1960s on. Filmmakers, right back from the birth of cinema, have been looking at art practice. You think back to Brunel, people like Dali, who worked in film, but also very much in the realm of art practice. But you see already some of those. Dali worked with Disney in his early years, so you already see from that, right back in the early years of last century, this exchange between artistic practice and more mainstream film and industry practice. And I think that's one of the characteristics why I believe we look outside pure artistic practices, because there is this interchange and borrowing of expressions and ideas from artistic practice and industry. So from the 1960s, though, what I think probably changed most was moving from the growth of independent film, performance and mixed media art, and of course just out-and-out technological exploration of the media. Bigger changes came along with the advent of much cheaper, more portable and much more easy to use digital cameras, editing and display equipment, projectors and so on, along with, on the other side, the growth of media theory, media criticism, a huge growth in most countries of expansion of media study and training. It has become one of the dominant forms in much of certainly the Western Hemisphere. And also with the advent, of course, of interactive and online as opposed to linear art forms. And all of those in a very rapid period have driven the field forward. And they've led to a huge upsurge in this field of practice, I guess, particularly from the mid-1980s onwards. More recently, traditional boundaries between art forms, and as I've even said, between art forms and industry practice, have been blurred as what is often called cross-media or creative industry practices and influences have expanded. So, first part of my talk, I'd like to look briefly at some aspects of these changes through a number of prominent and contrasting artists over the past 45 years or so who have influenced the field. There we go. Now, first, let me say, I'd love to show you moving images of all the works I have here, but it would be completely impractical. So, some of you will know all of these works, some of you may know none of the works. I hope you get a sense of them. I'd love to show you short clips, because obviously the moving image really doesn't show well from a still. But I hope enough of you know some of these works to know what I'm referencing. So this is one of the early works I'd like to look at. Chris Marker, who was again a filmmaker, a very famous filmmaker who turned installation artist, and he worked really in the legacy of the French New Wave and the whole European critical filmmaking traditions. This is La Jetée from 1962. And really you see that continuation of filmmakers working in the artistic realm. Quite contrasting with this, Nam June Paik, again an extraordinary well-known name, Fluxus movement pioneer, who really was one of the first people who wasn't so much interested in being on television, but he was interested in television as a global phenomenon, looking at the changes in global capitalism and so on. Very remarkable person who I suppose really was commenting on the nature of TV, what it does to culture, through artistic expression. And you'll see there two works. Moon is the Oldest TV, which I think was originally 1965, and he did an updated version, and Global Groove from 1973. Almost polar opposite from a Chris Marker. Another player doing things very differently, Samuel Beckett, the Irish playwright and dramatist and writer, very much in the tradition of formalist experimentations in filming theatre. And this is one of the early dynamics you get in the art sphere, where people who were doing performance art often used video early on simply to record the performances they were doing. But that started very quickly moving into using video as part of the construction of the artwork itself. I'd love to show you this piece. It's a beautiful one. Some of you may know it. These 4 characters simply circulate round in different patterns to a very strident beat. And it's extremely hypnotic and very, very formalist and minimalist. So again, you see traditions brought from other art forms coming into the video sector, initially simply as a recording medium, but then rapidly been developed to take forward the grammar of filmmaking itself. Here from a slightly later period, but 1972, you start seeing people looking more at the new technologies themselves. So this is Peter Campus, and he was experimenting with the aesthetic implications and possibilities of video technology, and particularly the act of recording yourself. And again, this is picking up from initially simply recording. So he was exploring here, through a medium of translucent glass, how 2 bodies could be brought together, one in real time and one recorded. And that exploration of the 2 natures of the body, one recorded and one real, was what he started experimenting with. So really, from a similar period, quite distinctive approaches. We then move on a little later. Pierre Huyghe, again an enormously famous artist, and he really started exploring social and cultural constructions and relationships of and through film, media, memory, history and experience. And this is a recreation of a very famous bank robbery that was made as a mainstream Hollywood film, and then he deconstructed the film using the original bank robber against the, I think this was Dustin Hoffman who performed in it, and really he put the Hollywood film together with a reconstruction in a studio by the original bank robber. And it's quite an interesting commentary on the nature of film and the nature of storytelling in film. And again, already you're seeing this enormous diversity of approach coming in, where Pierre Huyghe, again, really borrowing very strongly from mainstream film itself. One of the most famous cycles of all, Matthew Barney. Again, this is from late 1990s through into the early 2000s. And really, he took avant-garde video and mixed media installation to quite new levels of experimentation and complexity. In his terms, this is the Cremaster cycle, and I think this is from Cremaster 3 in 2002. This was a cycle of films where he explored, in his terms, a self-enclosed aesthetic system that explores processes of creation and of form, employing narrative models from other realms such as biography, ritual, symbolism, mythology. Again, a very, very different approach. Those of you will know it. He has both shown this as an installation piece in an art gallery context, but also shown it as a film piece in cinemas. So again, a piece that he's quite happy to show in 2 different formats. Douglas Gordon. Again, we're now into the realms of about 2002, 2003. Again, somebody very interested in a formalistic approach and interested in how the moving image exists sort of in time and the nature of the image itself. So a bit like Pierre Huyghe, but in a slightly different way, exploring the nature of the moving image through the moving image. And again, what you're starting to see in this period is, again, the technology allowing larger scale projections where the projection mechanism can almost disappear and you have these floating images in space. And so again, not interested in the technology per se, but the new technology allowing these artists to really present in quite different ways than have ever been seen before, and obviously quite different from the cinema experience of the first 80 or 90 years of the moving image. Isaac Julian, a British artist, and he has a culturally diverse background, and one of the things he was very interested in was exploring the background of his cultural diversity and influences by exploring the narrative possibilities or storytelling possibilities of video with an extraordinary aesthetic virtuosity, and again now the technology allowing extremely high resolution projection of large immersive experiences.